Hey everybody, Josh Hannenberry here, Truck Focus Podcast. First off, I hope you're having a really good day. Super excited for today's episode as I have a mentor of mine, Gord Onley, join the podcast. So Gord is an expert when it comes to finance, factoring, and he works for an exceptional organization called JD Factors. So we dive into what is factoring, who is it for, what's kind of the process to get through it, so that way at the end of the day you can get your money faster. So stay tuned, we're getting to it now. Good day, and welcome back to another episode of the Truck Focus Podcast. On today's episode, I'm super excited to introduce my industry expert in wealth management, factoring sector in the transportation industry, Gord Onley. So over the course of his career, Gord has been very influential in the transportation sector and has been able to lean on his experience to help others succeed in the industry. So as a business development officer in Western Canada for JD Factors, Gord is able to have a significant impact on small businesses in an area that truly matters, and that's helping companies get paid for their hard work fast. So welcome, Gord. Super excited to have you here.
That's great, Josh. Thanks so much. I appreciate the introduction.
So yeah, absolutely. So why don't you start us off, just kind of paint a picture of who is Gord?
Yeah, I'm originally from Ontario, grew up, born and raised in Toronto. I'm married with 4 kids. 2 of them are out of the house, 2 of them are still at home. And my wife and I, Tracy, we moved here to open a Western Canada office for JD Factors coming up on 7 years ago now.
It's incredible. How, I guess, transitioning with kids in and out of the house, how has that been with your whole experience in Western Canada now?
Well, I mean, you're a father as well, so you can appreciate that. There's never a down moment. And so, especially with COVID and my kids doing school from home, you're juggling a few things each and every day, but actually it's been a real blessing for us.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree, especially the opportunities just to being at home and seeing the kids, and the best part's hearing the laughter and the conversations. It's like, okay.
That's right.
All the hard work is worth it.
Like neither of us can guarantee we won't have a kid walking in the background during this interview.
Exactly.
That's part of it.
Yeah, exactly. So why don't you kind of explain the finance side of factoring? Like what is factoring?
Well, I mean, factoring is basically the selling of a company's invoices for cash. And so the company that buys the invoices is a factoring company or a factorer. And what they will do is they will provide a cash advance to a business in exchange for their invoices. And that cash is used to bridge the gap from when a job is completed until the invoice gets paid, typically 30 to 90 days. And so that cash can be used by the business for any financial demand that they may have. In the case of trucking, it's often fuel or paying other drivers.
That's incredible. So how did you mentioned you came from east to west to start the office. How did you get into the world of factoring then?
Well, I had worked in commercial finance for about 10 years prior to getting into factoring, and it was actually through a call from a recruiter. And the funny thing was, the recruiter said to me, would you like to interview for a job in factoring? And my question was, what is factoring? Because a lot of people don't know what that is. And although I'd been a small business owner for almost 10 years and then worked in commercial finance, I never encountered a factoring company. But when he explained what factoring was, I immediately saw the power of it for small businesses.
That's incredible. So kind of over time, you've been able to see just in your own self the impact that you're having on the lives of so many smaller businesses and just by offering the service.
Yeah, I mean, I try to put myself in the seat of the small business owner. So I like I said, ran a small business for almost a decade. So I understand the demands of cash flow and how important that is. And so every time I talk with a new prospect, I try to put myself in their seat and appreciate where they're coming from.
That's awesome. Yeah, when we first met, I remember thinking back when I had my trucking outfit and how nice it would have been to have cash in hand.
Yeah.
Knowing that it was a big job, it was whatever I was going to get paid, but like I hated the term net 30. I hated some construction companies were like, no, we're net 60.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I still remember that feeling of Where were you back then?
Well, and when I ran a small business, we did factoring in a fashion, and what it's called is friends and family. And so we had gone out to friends and family, and we had borrowed money to cover off our cash flow and paid them interest for that. And so again, when the recruiter contacted me and explained factoring, I'm like, okay, I see the power of it. And I've actually done that kind of in a fashion. The difference with JD Factors and the other factoring companies out there, it's more formalized. And so they're actually helping you manage the AR. Probably the difference with the company I work for and the other factors is we do what's called non-recourse factoring. And so that's actually an important distinction when it comes to factoring. There are what's called full recourse factors and non-recourse factors. And a full recourse factor will buy the invoices as I described and provide the cash advance. But if your client, in this case, the shipper, is slow to pay, they're going to return the invoice to you and do what's called a chargeback. And they're going to say after 60 or 90 days, this invoice isn't good anymore. You have to pay back the money that we advanced to you plus the fee. And most trucking companies can't do that. And so what they have to do is they have to sell a brand new invoice and then take over responsibility to collect on invoice that is probably going to go delinquent. And so that's the way most of the factoring companies do it. It's not a bad thing per se, but it's just the way they operate. With my company, JD Factors, the difference is we do what's called non-recourse factoring. So we'll do the same cash advance, but if the invoice goes delinquent, takes more than 60 to 90 days to pay, we take over the responsibility. We take the risk. So we don't do the chargeback. So it's just different ways of doing factoring, but obviously I think my way is, or our company's way is superior.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a little less risk per se on the carrier. So have you found then different clients have come to you because of that? Like that's a really good feature, or is that just, that's part of your guys' reputation? That's what you do?
Yeah, definitely clients come to me from that. I'm thankful that a lot of the business I get now is referrals from existing clients. And so I'll get somebody call me and say, hey, I'm a friend of so-and-so's. He said I should talk with you and deal with you. And as a sales representative, business development representative, you love to get calls like that. And that's a vindication that the company's, not just myself, but the company's doing a good job. Because when it comes to factoring, unlike a mortgage or say a lease on a truck or trailer, you aren't just buying money and then that's it. So you're looking at the rate. With factoring, you are paying a fee for the money for sure, but you're also buying into an ongoing relationship where the factoring company is representing the carrier with the shipper. And so there's some good value with that. I think some factoring companies do a very good job at representing their carriers well with the shippers. I think there's some that could definitely improve how they represent their carriers.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, cash flow is king, and it's interesting when you're waiting to get paid, but you see an opportunity in business that you want to pursue, but you're 30 days too late because you had to wait 30 days to get paid to buy that next piece of equipment. And yeah, you can really help companies escalate growth really fast, which then bridges the relationship with the shipper and the receiver, because you want good equipment hauling product to ensure it's safe and compliant. So that's nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And you haven't asked the question yet, but I'm sure you'll get to it. Is factoring good for every company, trucking company out there? And I'd actually say no. I think if you have an established trucking company, 4, 5, 10 trucks, and you are happy with the growth level where you're at, maybe adding 1 truck a year or just staying where you're at, if you're managing your cash flow well, then you do not need a factoring company, in my opinion. But if you are growing or you're looking to grow your company and you're looking to go from 1, 2, 3, 5 trucks to maybe 10 trucks in the space of a year or two, then factoring can provide that fuel that you need, and that fuel is cash to buy that additional equipment to take on those larger jobs.
And is there, I guess, a prerequisite or multiple that carriers, owner-operators need to think about before speaking with yourself?
Really, no. I think it just comes down to having a demand for cash. And although I work with a lot of startup companies, some of them have been operating for a year and they've been trying to do it on their own. And they just realize it's just too hard at the beginning to try to cover off all those bills. And I mean, nothing to get fuel's the biggest expense. So, and nothing against the fuel companies, but usually for a newer company, if they extend any credit terms at all, it's only 7 days. And so every 7 days, they have to come up with more cash to cover off the fuel. But as you observed, it's 30 to 60 days that most invoices pay on. And so how do you bridge that gap? And so that's factoring is one way that you can bridge that gap.
That's incredible. Yeah, fuel. I remember, constantly we had just a company credit card for every truck, and managing only buy $300 worth of fuel today, please. That's all we got.
Yeah.
And it's just the added stress that you're helping eliminate. So that's, again, the biggest question I think people need to take away in this part of the conversation is, why haven't I heard about this before? And you need to reach out to Gord. And I'm an advocate for Gord, so I say that confidently. I don't, as anyone that knows that's listened to our podcast, I'm really big on introducing genuine people. And Gord, we've known each other for probably about a year, and just on and off conversations, and very consistent. So there's my little bit of you need to talk to Gord if you're having those type of questions right now, because it's not the shipper, it's not their fault they're taking the net 30. That's just standard business practice.
Business,
yeah, exactly. So, but you definitely, if you're in that position, I highly recommend it. So that's cool. So I guess thinking about you and your profession, are you, without going into too much detail if there's confidentiality, but can you kind of highlight some of the successes you've helped carriers see you've seen carriers go through since working with them?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. In the 7 years I've been with JD Factors, I've been fortunate enough to fund literally hundreds of trucking companies in that time here in Western Canada. So there's been a lot of success stories for sure. For me, I take the greatest satisfaction in working with startups and companies where they've gone out, they've gone their MC authorities, they've gone their insurance, and we help guide them to their very first loads and purchase those loads. And so some of those companies stay as 1 or 2 trucking companies. Some of them grow into 5 or 10 trucks. Like, it's remarkable in the space of 6 months to a year. And so really the startups are where I take the greatest satisfaction.
That's incredible. Yeah, I have a soft spot, I'd say, for startups too, just because there's a different level of excitement. Maybe they're a little naive of what's possible, which is perfect, because that's the type of energy I like seeing in our industry. So
right.
Are you able?
They have got, if I could interrupt, they have guts too. And that's the thing that I really respect. I mean, it takes a lot of guts to go out and start up your own business.
Yes.
And with a trucking company, you're typically taking on an enormous amount of debt in buying a truck and potentially a trailer as well. And you've got to go, and you've got to get loads, and you've got bills to pay. And so really truckers are the fuel that really runs our economy. They are the engine that runs our economy. And I mean, we've all heard that adage, you can look around any room, and I can look around my room, and you look around yours, and 90% of what you see has arrived on a truck.
Yes.
And so, especially in the context of COVID, where so many of us are staying inside and not going anywhere, it's the truckers that are going out there every day, and many of them are going cross-border, picking up loads and bringing it back to keep our economy fueled and to keep the products on the shelves. So, I mean, I've got a lot of respect, always have had a lot of respect for truckers, more so now with COVID.
Totally. Yeah, my 11-year-old, he sums it up as, if you got it, a truck brought it. And we've basically, you can't see it, but it's over here on my wall, because I'm like, that's the most simple but most powerful way to describe the value. And when you start thinking about, like, obviously dissecting that small phrase a lot deeper, it's like, yeah, that's so true. So for an 11-year-old to see the value in the professionalism in the person, and that's something I always try and coach him, is it's the person. Like, professional drivers, small carriers, like, they're the backbone of our industry. As people, Absolutely. They matter. And like you mentioned initially, they have families, they have little ones that it's super influential. So no, that's cool. So someone signs the paperwork, you mentioned that you can help them. Is it helping them get the loads, or how does that part work?
Well, I do have access to different load boards, but I mean, we aren't a load board provider, but we, where, I get questions, I definitely help to try to direct them. I mean, it is their responsibility to get the load, so I want to be, we aren't a load board provider or administrator, but we will finance that from them from that very first invoice.
Okay.
And so as long as they have it just has to be an incorporated company. We do the checks to make sure they do have an account with CRA. They've got their safety insurance completed. They don't have to have MC authorities. Probably only half my guys go cross-border. The rest of them stay within Canada. But as long as they can show that they're an entity and they come through the door with that, that first load confirmation, that signed bill of lading showing the load has been delivered, we'll even do up the invoicing for them. And that's another service that we provide. We do what's called paperless factoring. And so many of my clients will literally take pictures of the signed bill of lading from the loading dock in their cab and then upload that to us. That's good enough. Provide that with the load confirmation. That for us, that's a factorable load, and we can have the money within your account within 24 hours.
Wow. Yeah, that was definitely where I was going with my next question. So thanks. I just like being able to see things get pieced together. And again, thinking about my own experience, I hated tracking paperwork. I hated wondering, crap, I'm not going to be able to invoice this for 7 days and I got to wait. But the fact that, you can do it from your phone in your truck while you're, that's pretty incredible service. Do you find a lot of people are utilizing that then once they hear about it?
Yes, very much so. I mean, with my contact information, I probably receive as many texts as I do phone calls, and so I'll get text photos of all sorts of documentation, and I welcome it. And so I'm a benefactor of, as you are, of the new technology. This company's been around for 32 years. Back in the day, my manager, Tina, used to say that it was all, done through mail, and, so it was all paper transactions. And so the money would flow a lot slower. But nowadays, it's amazing how quickly we can get money off to people.
That's incredible. So I'm assuming that it's an auto deposit. It's not a check to them, or?
Correct. Yeah, well, they have different options. So we can do a same day money wire, or we can do a 1 day EFT. And so it really depends on what the client wants. We offer free 1 day EFT service. The money wires, we have to charge a nominal fee, which is exactly what the bank charges. But if they need the money same day, we can provide it to them same day.
Incredible. Yeah, no, the value add, and so anyone listening, if you're in a position where you're stressed, I have all the empathy in the world when we're talking small carrier, stressed about finances, the mechanics holding the truck. All of that is it's eliminated. And I'll say it again. Where were you? Like, why didn't we know each other like well over a decade ago? And I'm like, man, I'm bald because I'll blame part of it on that. And that's really neat.
Well, it's classic with all small business owners, and myself included. You do a very good job at bringing on new business, and you don't want to spend the time trying to manage collections of the business that you already had, because that takes away from your time driving or your time finding new loads. And so, yes, we have to charge a fee, and so a fee for our service. But I think there's great value in that, because we take away that headache of not only preparing the invoice, but sending it to your client, and then also managing the collection process and contacting your shipper to make sure you get paid in a timely fashion.
What if the shipper is, say, a farmer in southern Saskatchewan? Are you like, where is it? Does the shipper and receiver have to be a corporation too, or how does
they
that
do?
Work? Okay,
they do, and that probably explains why maybe people don't know of factoring as much, is because it is a B2B service. It's a business to business service. It's not a business to consumer service.
Okay,
and so we only buy from business entities, and part of the reason for that is you can readily check the credit on the different shippers to make sure they're credit worthy, which is another service that we provide. We provide free credit checks for our clients' shippers. And especially now, unfortunately, with COVID, there are shippers that are defaulting on payments. So, and carriers, whether they factor or not, and I mean, even if they're not a client, I'm happy to run quick credit checks for people, for different carriers, just to make sure they don't get stuck with a bad load. Because if it looks like you're getting, a great rate for a load, it doesn't matter if you don't get paid. You have to get paid for that load.
Yes. So from JD Factor's standpoint, I'm assuming since you're west, and I know off camera, we've kind of discussed this a little bit, but how would it work if you're fresh starting out and you're in Eastern Canada to Western Canada to in the United States? If people were to contact you, you have a network strong enough with JD Factors that you could still help ensure that they're protected and have the service?
Yes, we have eight offices in the US and 3 offices in Canada. So we work off of territory. I manage the Manitoba West, so I have everyone in the 4 western provinces. And then I have colleagues both in Ontario and Quebec to cover off Ontario, Quebec, and the eastern provinces. And then 8 offices in the US, situated geographically, depending on where carriers may be.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's a really good service. And just again, thinking of protecting carriers and sharing different expertise and advice. I think you've done a good job so far, just really showing the value, showing that it's stress-free, and you don't come across as a greedy person, which is nice because it's like, no, I genuinely care for your success in your business. And it's just understanding again that the carriers are a backbone of our industry, backbone of our society, I should say, because yeah, we know if they stop, a lot of things that we've become overly comfortable with just are gone. So
Right, within days, right?
yes,
I mean, that's the thing. It'll happen right away if the trucking sector is not operating.
yeah. So you mentioned startups. Is there any other, I guess, services that you could not as a sales pitch, just as areas that you help startup businesses with that you haven't mentioned so far? I know factoring is one of them, paid fast, all that great stuff. But is there anything else that you find startups need that are maybe they didn't realize, oh, I didn't know I needed that, and you're able to guide or provide some guidance there?
Well, I think there's overall trucking consulting firms, and I know you provide services like that as well. And the challenge with trucking, I think, is if you're starting out on your own, there's an enormous amount of hurdles that you have to overcome in order to even open up your business and be ready to receive loads. And I think some truckers, if they're new to the sector, don't appreciate that. And so I think there's great value for your trucking compliance companies, authorities agents, if you want to drive into the US, to make sure that your paperwork is in line. And finance companies as well. Let's face it. I mean, with the cost of a rig and cost of trailer, 99% of trucking companies do not have that money cash in the bank that they can just write a check for. So they need to go to a finance company to borrow that money.
Yes. Yeah, I was when I first met you virtually. I know it was just over the phone in our first conversation, and you highlighted a couple of things. I had a meeting with a friend of mine that's in the insurance space shortly thereafter, and he was like, "Man," he's like, that could help a lot of people, especially with like a down payment because they have to get A and B done to serve C, and they're ready to serve
Right.
C. They're just waiting on this. So yeah, there's a lot of value out there, and it's just nice as you continue to build just professional relationships. You have trusted people that you have full circle exposure to say, you have a question about this, I have your person. And I like that mentality a lot. So that's really neat. So as you continue to navigate in this space, I'm a big believer in we build a legacy for ourselves every day. Part of that's reputation, part of that's future intentions. What would you want, or what do you say right now your legacy is? And as you continue to serve our industry, what do you want your legacy to continue to be?
Wow, that's a great question. I love working with small business owners, and I think like the company I work for, JD Factors, everyone that works there, and I've been there for 7 years. I'm actually one of the newer employees, and so I'm maybe the face of the company to bring on new business. But as I said before, when somebody factors, there's an ongoing relationship that they're buying into, and so we have a small army of account executives in Ontario and in Quebec and in the US that provide the ongoing daily representation for our carriers in the marketplace and with the shippers, ensuring that the paperwork is done correctly and ensuring that the shippers are paying their bills on time. And so the JD Factors has been around for 32 years and they have a great reputation. And so feel fortunate to be working for the company and being able to contribute to that.
That's awesome. And I agree. I like reputation is big, but I monitor consistencies, and I could talk about that all day long. I like monitoring who I met the first time happens to be 6 months later, happens to be a year to 5 years down the road. I like watching to see, oh, they said that last time. Okay. And oh, they use the same type of tone, and oh, they smile in this part of the conversation. Like I like that to me is a way of building trust, but also just when you're in a position where people are asking you for advice, I like being able to say, that's way out of my scope, but I have someone. And
Right.
I think that's important because humility is key. and just being able
Absolutely.
to say that. So yeah, I appreciate that.
It's a compliment when you get a carrier coming to you and saying, hey, can you recommend somebody for insurance, right? Or can you recommend somebody for compliance? Or I'm having an issue with my MC authorities. And that's the first thing I do as well, Josh. I say, you know what, that's not my area of expertise, but you know, you could try calling Josh, for instance, he might be able to help you with that.
Yeah.
And then I always like to check in with my industry professionals, I'll put it that way, to see how it went, you know, and find out from the client, you know, did you reach some satisfaction, or were they able to help you resolve that issue?
Yeah, and I think that follow through is important too. So
Sure.
yeah, I think it shows that you care to the carrier, but also the relationship with the business or with the different business. Because yeah, I think a lot of times people claim, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I was busy." It's like,
Yeah,
okay, but in the calendar, but like it's only really 10 numbers to hello.
that's right. Yeah.
Or a quick text. But yeah, no, I think that's neat. So just kind of as we close, Gord, is there any, I guess, final advice? Maybe not final, but any advice that you'd like to share? Any words of, I like using words of encouragement, but just to our industry, to startups, anything that you'd like to share?
Well, you know, I think for startups, I think the future is bright with the transportation sector. The transportation sector is not going away anytime soon. It is truly the engine that drives our economy. You know, and it is the epitome of a resource that we all need. And so I don't see it going anywhere soon. You know, you hear about talk about autonomous trucks and all different industry advances, but you know, I don't see those replacing owner operators or carriers anytime soon. And in fact, there's a glut for drivers. I read just last week in the U.S. they're predicting a shortfall of 1 million drivers over the next 10 years, and so I think there's going to be huge opportunities in the trucking industry for the foreseeable future. And I'm just thankful I'm a small part of it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, Gord. And yeah, I agree. When I think of, like, I'm in some conversations with autonomous, I'm in some conversations with what is a driver shortage and how are they all going to intertwine. And I like hearing other people's educated opinion, because I agree with or I respect your knowledge base. And it's nice when people are like, how about this? Or, oh, maybe we'll connect some dots over here. And yeah, I think that's another conversation for another day. So, but yeah, no, I appreciate that. So anyone interested in getting in touch with you, what's kind of the best avenue to do that?
You know, probably the phone number is the best because you can phone or text me at that. And that's 403 370 7547. You can get me through JD Factors website or email at Onley, that's GONLEY, at jdfactors.com. But call or text is usually the quickest way to get a hold of me.
Awesome. And yeah, I'll include all of your contact details just in the show notes. And yeah, when I publicize, I like that word, publicize, on just all platforms, I'll ensure to include all of that information in my messaging too. Because yeah, you're my industry expert. You're just a genuinely good person, which I really appreciate. And yeah, I just highly recommend anyone looking to talk finance, talk trucking, to obviously look for factoring, to definitely reach out to Gord. And yeah, it's been awesome to have you on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Josh. It's been
Absolutely.
great.
Thanks. Okay, well, have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye.
Well, that's all for today's episode. Gord, thank you so much for taking the time to join today. It means the world. It's just really nice to see you get passionate about where your expertise is and the impact that it's having on the lives of so many in our industry. When I first learned of factoring, I kept saying to myself, where was this when I had my trucking company? Because waiting for your money, net 30, 60, 90, can be stressful when there's things happening in the moment. So if you're looking for factoring, I highly recommend you reach out to Gord. He does work for an awesome organization called JD Factors, who I'm really happy to just encourage people to use. And anyone that's listening to the podcast, thank you. Thank you for the constant support. My son Avery wasn't on this one, but we really appreciate just all the kind words, all the likes, the shares, and all that good stuff. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I do ask that you subscribe to our YouTube channel by simply pressing the subscribe button, because the greater the impact, the greater the following. The same if you're listening to this on any other platform, we ask that you like, share, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff, just because, again, the more people that are aware of the Truck Focus podcast, just the greater the following, the greater the impact. So thank you again. Thank you, Gord. Really appreciate it. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye.